Good afternoon, year ones. Welcome to your art lesson today. And today we're going to explore concentric patterns. So the big question really is, what is a concentric pattern? Because you probably haven't heard that term before. We'll be finding out in just a moment. But our success criteria today is, firstly, we need to explore examples of concentric patterns. Then identify what a concentric pattern is. Then choose a shape. And then finally create your own concentric pattern. So let's start off with a 5-minute doodle. So if you like, you can draw whatever you want for 5 minutes, or you can pop onto YouTube and search for Art Hub for Kids, as that's what we often use for our drawings. So just pause the screen here and have your 5-minute doodle time and then make your way back over. Okay, so let's do our just checking questions. So from last week, red, yellow and blue are primary colours or secondary colours? And then from last unit, you can paint a self-portrait of your friend. Is that true or false? And then looking at this self-portrait here, this self-portrait by Frida Kahlo is an example of abstract art. True or false? And finally, sorry, bear with me a moment. And finally, from last year, if my friend's drawing looks different to mine, it means it's not as good. True or false? Okay, let's go through those answers. So red, yellow and blue are primary colours. Remember that those are the colours that all other colours can be made from. Then you can paint a self-portrait of your friend. That is false. What does a self-portrait mean? That's right, it's a portrait of yourself. So you can't paint a self-portrait of your friend. A self-portrait is a portrait of yourself. And this self-portrait by Frida Kahlo is an example of abstract art. True or false? It's false. It is not abstract, it's realistic. And then finally, if my friend's drawing looks different to mine, it means it's not as good. False again. Okay, the great thing about art is that it's an expression of ourselves. We can express ourselves in any way, and it means that everybody's art looks different. And that's what's so great about it. So today's vocabulary, a few of them, these words we already know, and then so we'll just be refreshing our memories. So what does this word say? That's right, abstract. And as we know, that means art that does not depict reality. It's not realistic, but instead uses shapes, colours, forms and lines. So as we've been looking at Kandinsky, we know he's a good example of an abstract artist. Then mix means to combine or put together to form one substance or mass. We're looking at mixing colours to make one new colour, or lots of different colours actually. Primary colours, any group of colours from which all other colours can be obtained by mixing. So that's red, blue and yellow are the primary colours. Then we have our secondary colours, a colour resulting from the mixing of two primary colours, and those colours are green, orange and purple. And our new vocabulary, concentric shapes, means shapes that share the same centre. You'll see what I mean as we go through our lesson today. So let's have a look at this piece of art. And I want you to think about these 4 questions as we have been the last few weeks. So who do you think created this art? What shapes can you see? What lines can you see? And what colours can you see? So pause here if you need to discuss those 4 questions or to think about those 4 questions. Okay, So well done if you said Kandinsky. This is a piece of art by Kandinsky, and it's called Squares with Concentric Circles. So that's that word, concentric. And what shapes can we see? Now, you probably noticed, but it's also in the title. So squares around each set of concentric circles. So unlike lots of other pieces of Kandinsky's art, this only has two different shapes in it, squares and circles. And then what lines can we see? So remember, that's thinking about the different shapes of lines, the different sizes of lines, the different thicknesses of lines. So we can see, looking at each section of this piece of art, we can see that the circles have different thicknesses, don't they? Especially if you look down here at this one, we can see really thin line and then much thicker line. So all of the circles, they're not perfect circles, but they are all varying in different thicknesses of the lines that are making up the circles. And we can see there aren't any straight lines in this art either, are there? Because although we have squares, just like circles, they're not perfect squares. So the lines are quite wobbly, aren't they? So when we're creating our art today, we need to remember that our shapes do not need to be perfect, because Kandinsky is very famous for this particular painting, and his shapes are not perfect. It's all about his self-expression. And then what colours can we see? Well, there's a variety of colours, isn't there? A variety of primary colours and secondary colours and tertiary colours as well. So we've got some yellows, reds and blues. So those are our primary colours. And we've also got some purples, some greens, some oranges, haven't we? And then lots of different shades in between those colours too. And some black. Did you spot any that I haven't mentioned? Or just notice white as well? So lots of different colours. Okay, so you're learning today. Today we're going to explore using different shapes to create a concentric pattern. So Kandinsky made his concentric circles, and you are going to explore different shapes. So let's start with circles. So recreating Kandinsky's work. So you can use whatever resources you have at home. So if you've got paint, then brilliant, use your paints. If you don't have paint, that's absolutely fine. If you've got colouring pencils or crayons or felt tips, you can use any of those today to create your art. But as a tip, you might find it easier to start from the middle. So if you firstly create your circle that goes in the middle, and then another circle around it, and then the next circle around it, and then the next one, it'll make it easier to make sure that you have clear shapes and they don't start wobbling into each other. So that's just a little tip there. You don't have to do it that way, because as I said, art is all about self-expression. Do it however you like, but it might help. And as I said, remember your shapes don't need to be perfect, but remember to include a variety of line thicknesses and colours. Now, if you've got paintbrushes at home and you have different size paintbrushes, you've got some thinner paintbrushes, some thicker paintbrushes, then make sure that you're using that variety to help you create your different line thicknesses today. Okay, so here's just an example of concentric circles from Kandinsky's piece of art. So you can pause the screen here to have a go at making some concentric circles, and then come back to have a look at the next shape. Okay, so now let's have a try at making some concentric squares. And then when you've done that, let's try some concentric circles, not circles, triangles, sorry. And then maybe even have a go at some concentric hearts. And I wonder, can you think of any other shapes to explore? So now's your chance to think of any extra shapes that you might want to have a go at making concentric versions of. And just remember, when we're making our concentric shapes, let's go back to that definition. It means shapes that share the same center. So just like we've been looking at, you can start from the middle and build out. So when you have explored all those different shapes, making concentric shapes, and actually, if you've already had a go at this, then don't worry. But if you are watching right to the end of this video, it would be great if you could use a different selection of mediums. So you might choose to use paint for one, you might choose to use crayons for another, felt tips for another, colouring pencils for another, just to explore the different mediums. But when you have finished, it'd be lovely if you could set up a gallery to share your concentric shapes and have a go at taking some photos to send into the Year 1 email account so that we can have a look at your amazing work. And with your gallery, why don't you invite your grown-ups along or your brothers and sisters along to have a little look, act like it, pretend like it's a real art gallery. They can come and decide which piece of your work is their favourite. And I want you to think as well about which is your favourite piece of work and why. So which concentric shape that you've created is your favourite and why is it your favourite? Okay, have fun exploring. I can't wait to see all the photos. See you later.